Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we have a great guest a person I consider a friend, Matthew Roberts, coming up here in just a moment. This week, Charles Blear's blog is a 1991 UFO crop circle investigation by Paranet/MICAP. Great blogs as usual by Charles Blear, always very informative. And so our guest, it's funny, I was watching Netflix, or I turned on Netflix recently, and you go to like your homepage, and all of a sudden there's Matthew, and I go, oh, great, in the Encounters series on Netflix. Anyway, it just reminded me, I reach out. He hasn't been on for quite a while, and always enjoy his company. And so I'm going to bring him in right now. Matthew, welcome to the show. Whoops, so you're muted, Matthew. Yeah,
sorry.
Don't worry. Everyone does that. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me, Martin.
Yeah. It was really something to see. First of all, I should say this is a pre-recorded show, but how I do pre-recorded shows, generally speaking, is I just do them exactly like a live show. And you have a work conflict, so you couldn't do it at our regular time. And so I just do them just the way they are. I don't edit, but I usually am able to be in the chat room, and this week I will be as well, and interact that way. But so glad to have you back. So yeah, you're all of a sudden you're taking up my whole big screen TV here, and I'm saying, oh my God, Matthew, that's awesome. So I'm so glad that you were asked to be on that series, and a great job. What was that like? Well, first of all, we should backtrack because you haven't been on for a couple of years, and we'll talk about all that stuff as we go along. But I would like to, just for someone who didn't catch you the first time, you were on the Roosevelt, and you were on the Roosevelt when the Gimbal video was recorded, and you saw it firsthand. So I'd like to talk about, I guess that would be what sparked your interest in this topic to begin with, or did you? I can't remember. Did you have kind of a interest in it prior to that?
No, I did not. I had no interest in this topic whatsoever. And I think just like everyone else, my interest was sparked by the New York Times article in 2017, obviously, because when that article came out, there was a release of the gimbal footage, right? And that was really what kind of drew me in. Up to that point, I never expected that I would ever see that footage again. I never, I thought if this is something, it's some program, I'm not read into it. I don't work on it, so I'll never know. So I just kind of put it away. From 2015 until 2017 when I saw it again, and then the New York Times article came out. There were some people associated in that article to the Stars Academy. And so I started, the analyst in me came out, and I started to drill down on that, to have these people written books, so I started reading Tom DeLonge's stuff. And then I started reading some Jacques Vallée. And then shortly thereafter, my personal experiences started with the phenomenon.
Yeah, I know. And what those experiences are quite amazing. I'll never forget when you first told me that. I was like kind of shocked because you were also in Naval Intelligence. Is that?
Yeah. So I was on the Theodore Roosevelt in 2015, and then I transferred early in 2017 to the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington, D.C. And that's where I was when the New York Times article hit. And I started to have these follow-on experiences. I guess now, post James Lucassi's book, we would call that, the Hitchhiker effect, maybe,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we'll get into all that. But first of all, I'd like to talk about what your experience was like on the ship. What was there a buzz? was, were people talking about, hey, there's something crazy going on here? I mean, how did all that come about, and how did you see that video there for the first time? And I pulled up, I think this is an edited version where it takes out,
Yeah.
a lot of the glare that you often see in it.
Mhm.
But anyway, so when this happened, what was it like there?
Yeah, so people would think that maybe the ship was abuzz with this, but it really wasn't, because it wasn't known to many people, right? If I mean, there's like 5,000 people on board an aircraft carrier, but if you didn't work for the air wing and you weren't in intel, you didn't know about this. You didn't know this was going on.
Ah,
So, but I did, since that was my world, there were people who were talking about it. I remember specifically, and I put it in the book, that I was going into Civic one day for an intel brief, and there were two pilots standing on either side of the doorway into the briefing room, and one of them said to the other one, "Hey, did you see all this footage, about the UFOs?" And the other one's like, "Yeah, I saw it," and I just kind of put my head down
huh,
and walked right past them, because I didn't want any part of that conversation. I just didn't. I mean, and so, but prior to that, I mean, I was made aware of this when, this guy I knew, buddy of mine, worked kind of more closely with the pilots than I ever did. Um, we were kind of sitting around in my space, which was a totally different space, another skiff, and he walks in and he's like, "Hey, you're not going to believe this." He's like, "Look at this." Right, and so he tells me where it is. I pull it up on my computer, and that was the first time I saw the gimbal footage. There was also the go fast footage was also there. um
oh, I didn't realize that. I should know that they
yeah.
were both the same. Now, let me ask you this: we always get this little version of, a couple of seconds here.
Mhm.
How? And I know the reason, from what I understand, is there's some classified uh, situations or maybe readings or something that may be able to be cropped out of that, and that's why they make it such a brief little video. Did you get to see like the full video, or was yours short like that as well?
No, that was the exact same length clip that I
Really?
remember seeing.
Wow.
Yeah. I did not see a longer version of that. But there were more videos.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to, and those videos still exist. We know they do. They have to.
Mhm.
And I really, if they weren't classified, I'm wondering why we're not seeing them, because I'd really love to know, and I bet you probably would too. Were there any other, unusual things that they saw while they were observing this?
Yeah. Uh well, there were other things, and hopefully I mean, hopefully that story will be told one day.
Hmm.
And but these things happen, right? They happen
Yeah.
in other battle groups. I mean, the Nimitz is another example of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so this, I guess what I'm getting at is that the events on the Theodore Roosevelt didn't seem to be that special.
Huh?
I mean, but they did to us at the
Yeah.
time, right? Because it was, something totally out of the ordinary,
Yeah.
obviously. But one of the things that I like to talk about is just that I wish that they would release footage and images of stuff that is unambiguous, right?
Right.
Like the stuff they've released so far, it's like, oh well, that
It's a,
could be a piece of trash,
it's a joke.
right?
They,
It
you
it
know, they
could
have
be a
better.
balloon,
They
and
have better stuff than that. I
right,
mean,
right.
yeah.
Let's just out with the stuff that is.
Yeah.
If you saw it, there'd be no question that is not a piece of garbage. That is not a balloon.
Yeah.
it is exactly what you think it is, you know? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's not beat around the bush
I
about
think that's I mean that goes along with softening the edges. I think
Mhm,
it's kind of like I mean, I've talked about this a couple times because it's pretty funny the way he does it. But I was watching recently. I don't know, a couple months ago, James Fox was on a panel, and Michael Shermer was there. And Michael Shermer started talking about this UFO. He went on and on to the details, and then he said, "But it was explained to be." And then James is getting, he's fuming, and then finally he gets a chance to talk, and he says, "We don't want to know about the ones we figured out. We don't want, yeah, they're a dime a dozen. That's not what we're interested in. That's not what we should be talking about. We
mhm.
should be talking about the ones that we can't understand, can't figure out." And then Shermer never had, I watched the whole thing. It was just a little clip that was out there, but Shermer never had a reply to that. And
Mhm,
but really, they have some great stuff,
mhm.
and and how much of it would be a classification issue for some type of secrecy? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you could speculate on that. Do you think there could be a lot of things that could be released that wouldn't jeopardize anyone?
I would think that those things certainly exist. I mean, with some of the satellite imagery, I'm not sure uh, that would ever be released, just because you don't want people to know what your capabilities are.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I mean, we've all seen public images of they show it all the time, right? Like they when that Russian plane dumped fuel on um, one of our drones. They came out with that footage. So
yeah,
what we're capable of seeing on these craft is not a mystery. Everybody knows it. They've made footage like that public, and they do it all the time. So
yeah,
why can't they show us something anomalous that was
yeah.
captured in that
Yeah.
same
Now,
way?
now I'm going to ask you a question that I asked a little bit differently, but to Lou Elizondo as well, and that is, were you overhearing things that um, you can't talk about that makes this even more amazing, or would you not even want to go there?
You mean in terms of
What you can talk about and what you can't talk about? Yeah,
well,
because it's because you were in a classified situation.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is people don't know it yet, but this topic is huge, um, and it, it touches every facet of your life, everyone's life, um, and I feel like people should be outraged that this is being kept from them. You
hmm.
know, I I would drive to work and I would see people just passing me on the freeway, or I'd go into a convenience store or get gas or something, and I'd just look around and I'm just like, these people, they have no idea, and that's just not right.
I, I,
It's not
I,
right.
I think that way often myself. I think about those things, and yeah, I mean, what did you think about the whole UAP hearing? I don't. I was there, by the way. I made it there. Do you think that's a? Do you think that was a positive thing?
I do.
Yeah.
um I think though that I think a lot of people, when it came to Grush's testimony, are a little standoffish about that. Um, in the
Yeah.
same way that I think that they're kind of a little bit standoffish about encounters. Like I think
Yeah.
they like to watch it, right? And it's kind of a scary story around Halloween time. But you got to understand, this stuff is real,
Yeah.
right? This is not a joke.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's so serious too. Um, I mean, Lou
Yeah.
Elizondo uses words like somber to
Hmm.
describe this. I certainly feel that same sentiment myself.
Hmm.
Um, and why can't people know? I mean, it's only holding us back. It's holding us back, and it's time.
Do you think, and I know I said this last week in last week's show, but do you think that part of the reason that this is kept secret is because they really don't know the whole thing, and maybe they can't say how they can protect us from these things that are here?
I think that I honestly think that one of the reasons it's it's still a secret is that nobody wants to talk about it, right?
Hmm.
Who wants to go? What politician
Yeah.
up until those hearings, right? What politician
Besides
wanted
Tim Burchett. Yeah.
wanted to stand there in front of a microphone and
Yeah.
say this stuff is real, and guess what? It's going to get even weirder.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, the weirdness factor to this, uh, I mean, that goes on as far as the eye can see. I mean,
Yeah.
and so I think that that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable because
Yeah.
you start to think about, well, what is reality then?
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
this is what it is,
Yeah.
and it's really it's going to upset your worldview. It will,
Yeah.
but I think for the better.
Right. I mean, it's better to know, although we don't really have the whole picture, but still, you look at, like, most people want to look at basically the nuts and bolts of
Hmm.
the UFOs, like UFO sighting, what could it be, that type of thing, but not go into the depth. And as soon as Grush was out there and he started talking about, crash retrievals, stuff like that, everybody's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. When I went and visited my sister at a lake, like a day or two after that came out this year, and
Hmm.
I started talking about it, and my nieces and everyone's eyes are glazing over, and 5 seconds in, like they're not even they're thinking about what's for dinner. They don't want to talk about it. Now, if I just said, well, this amazing UFO, over whatever, then I would have probably kept their attention through that. But as soon as you start saying, like, crashed, and there's possibly bodies here, and stuff like that, they don't want to talk about that at all. And that is the part that makes people uncomfortable, and things that happen to you are going to make some people feel uncomfortable. And I get it. I mean, it's a I mean, for me, after reading your book, I'm about halfway through, I would say, initiated. um, I start to think, like, I try to empathize and think, what would it be like to be you? And I would be curled up in the ball,
Hmm.
like you mentioned a few times. That's how I would handle something like that. I mean, I can't imagine living a functional life and having this kind of going on in the background. And you actually left before retirement.
Hmm.
And did any of that have to do with things that were going on, or was it just life changes?
Well, it was both. I mean, I once I realized that this was happening to me, and I realized kind of the truth of it, and that um, the reality we all live in is not what we think it is.
Yeah.
And the fact that that kind of stuff is kept from people, like we're not able to discover that because they've got this secret locked up, right? I just to me that was it's abhorrent, right? I don't agree with that at all. And so I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. I've only got 4 years left to retirement, but I can't justify staying for me just to collect a retirement. Um, it just didn't feel right. I've thought I've got to talk about this. This is crazy. you know? And people need to know that this is a real thing.
Mm,
Um, I mean, a lot of people like to associate people who are experiencers or who have had experiences as, these tinfoil hat wearing crazy people. But I mean, you can see I'm totally functional. I'm not, I'm
well,
not as,
yeah, after hanging with you too, also. Oh, I should mention this just like a sort of a shout out, and we'll get right back into this. But we had such a great time
yeah.
when I was out in Phoenix and we were hanging out together. We closed a restaurant basically. It
Mhm.
was Mark D'Antonio, it was Stacy, was there, Mary and Rob, Heather and Dave, and oh my God, we just had such a great night. That was so much fun. I didn't want it to end,
Yeah.
and then we met up earlier in the day, but
Mhm.
I'm sorry I just had to take that jag in case any of these people might be listening. So
Oh, yeah.
that was a blast.
Hmm.
But yes, you were. I would call you totally functional, and I would think, if I recall right, didn't people kind of lean on you for advice and things like that a lot of the
Uh,
times because of your demeanor and all that?
yeah. I mean, people at past jobs or even in the Navy, um, I had a boss in the Navy at one point that said to me, you are the most level-headed person I have
Yeah,
ever known, you know?
right. And you have that. You have that way about you, certainly. Yeah,
Right. And I mean, that's just the way I am. I've always been that way, and I continue to be that way. Um, these experiences have not changed that. But I do have a moral compass, right?
yeah,
And so I couldn't justify remaining silent about this because I know that there are a lot of people who start to go through these things. And if you go visit a psychiatrist today and you tell them I'm seeing non-humans in my room at night, right?
yeah.
You're automatically going to be diagnosed with something like psychosis or
Schizophrenia or something. Yeah,
schizophrenia, and
yeah,
and these, depending on what you do for a living, that could be a career ending
yeah,
diagnosis.
yeah.
And if that's not the truth of what's happening here, then what are we doing to people, you know?
Right.
And that is what I take issue with. Um, and people say, "Oh, you join the military is what it is." But you got to understand there's a line, right? And I feel like when we're lying about this to American citizens, right? And we're just totally okay with the fact that people's careers are being ended because they're diagnosed with these mental conditions that aren't really reflecting the reality of what's happening. Um, to me, it's disturbing. It's disturbing and it's immoral, and I couldn't do it. I
Yeah,
wouldn't do it, you know?
right. Have you ever, spoken like to other people that are also experiencing similar encounters? Like I'm talking about like support, because I've gone to a couple of those groups at conferences, and they seem very supportive of each other. And I'm just wondering, have you ever tried anything like that yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I have my email address up on my my Facebook page. A lot of people tell me you probably shouldn't do that, um but I feel like I've been through something, and if I can help someone else, then that's what I'm going to do. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And I uh the stories I've got. I mean, I won't use any names, but there was a guy that was reading my book that was going through this, and I didn't I he reached out to me. He came across my book in like this very paranormal, frightening way. And he started reading it. He started having these experiences. And his family, his wife in particular, hated that book. right?
Uh,
Because she thought he was just like slowly losing his mind, right?
uh, mm,
And so he reached out to me, and he had told his wife before the phone call that I had with him that one of two things was going to happen at the end of this phone call. Either he was going to be okay, or they were going to drive to the hospital and check him in for mental health.
wow. Yeah. Wow.
And that to me is just too much, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't need to be doing that. Like
Mm,
and so he was like, is this real? Is this really happening to me? And I said, yes. The experiences you're having are valid. They're real.
mm,
Just as real as your hand in front of your face.
mhm.
And just remain grounded. Don't let this. Uh, what would be the right word for it? Just remain grounded in life and with these experiences and see what they're telling you. See what these experiences are teaching you. Because there is a point, and so he's fine now,
Oh,
but
that's good. So
but
you helped someone
oh
very
yeah,
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's doing excellent. And he it was funny because I didn't know that all of that was going to happen before this phone call. I didn't know that he had said that to his wife, and I didn't know that he had family actually gathered at the house, like they were all waiting for this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
um
It was almost like an intervention type of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty serious. um
How about that? So let's talk a little bit about. I want to ask you how long after you first, we're talking about the hitchhiker type thing, whatever it
mhm,
is. So many people talk about that type of situation. Like it's almost like it opens a door if it's
mhm,
not a hitchhiker situation. It's opening a door to another whatever to come in. Uh, this happened in, I believe you said 2015, right? So you're there, and then uh, you change jobs into the intelligence part and all that. You're off the ship and everything.
mhm.
When did something show up?
It was shortly after the New York Times article, and I started to dig into it.
Ah,
Um, that
oh,
was that was when things started. Before because I had just pushed it off, right? I was like, I'll never know.
yeah,
Uh, but then when I had something to dig into, suddenly there's some meat there,
yeah,
and so I started to dig, and then it was almost immediately the weirdness started. You know, it was unreal, really.
yeah. I don't know if you care to talk about it, but or in a general way, whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, so something that is common among experiencers is this book called The Kabbalion by the three shits. I tell you how many experiencers I've come across that I don't know. I've never talked to them, or I come across them on Reddit and I say, "Hey, have you read The Kabbalion yet?" And they're a little taken aback by it because they're like, either "Yeah, I read it," or "No, it's on my reading list. It's on my nightstand right now."
Ah,
You know, and so I certainly came across that book in a very frightening paranormal way, through a series of just impossible coincidences that just totally rocked me.
yeah. I remember you laid that all out in your book.
Yeah,
How like someone just saying something. I think at an outdoor cafe. I can't remember what it was, but
yeah.
something just clicked with you
Mhm.
and made you look into that. Now, is that I can't remember. I know my producer Donna. By the way, she says hi.
Oh, hi.
She got that book right away
Mhm.
after you first were on my show. I've never. I might have peeked at it. I don't think I've ever read much in it. But anyway, is this in like an old? I just remind me, and for the person that's unfamiliar with what it is.
Yeah, so this book was written over 100 years ago by a guy named William Walker Atkinson.
All right,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, and it supposedly was written anonymously by the three initiates, is what it officially says. It's the Kabbalion by the three initiates. And it just gives kind of a synopsis of these 7 laws that govern the universe. And seemingly that's very simple, right? But then when you crack this book open, and a lot of people love this book, it talks about these 7 principles, but those 7 principles, you can see how they like pervade everything, right? And so it just becomes this very surreal thing to read because
Hmm.
you think everything around us, you think of it, it's just so complex. How could it be just 7 principles, but it really is kind of that simple, because you kind of realize that the universe is just everything in it, it's all just one thing.
Hmm.
And so that simplifies things immeasurably, right? And then you can describe the universe in 7 principles, and so
Hmm.
it's kind of an esoteric book, and it just very simply lays out these simple principles, but then, like I said, you start to dig into that and it's like, wow,
Yeah.
this actually is everything, you know
And so when you say that a lot of these people that you speak to are into this, have already looked into it. I wonder what that connection is. Why all of a sudden they're reading the same book that you're reading? I
Mhm.
mean, it's not like you go online and say, what should experiencers read, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
anywhere like that, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you come across a very paranormal and scary way, and it's you can't ignore it. Or at least I couldn't. It was clear to me that the universe was saying, "You will read this book," because
Hmm.
it was something that I came across, right? And I was not a religious person. I was not a spiritual person. And in my search, I came across this book and I read the synopsis and I was like, and in the synopsis, it said that there's no such thing as coincidence,
Hmm.
right? And that everything happens for a reason and it happens according to law, a universal law. Um, but we call it a coincidence because we don't understand the law that's associated with it. And so I was like, well, that's just nonsense. It's too far out there, But then I had this day-long series of just terrifying coincidences the next day, right after reading this synopsis and deciding I wasn't going to read it. And then that all culminated with me at this random gas station at midnight. And I'm at this point I'm terrified, right? Because of these series of events that has just unfolded throughout the day. Um, and I'm walking up to this table because I knew that I was at this gas station for a certain reason because of all of these coincidences kind of culminating in this. And there was like this homeless man who was sitting with these 2 women who were like dressed to the nines in like professional business attire. They looked like the civilian women I work with, and like they were going to go brief Congress. That's what they looked like.
Hmm.
But they're at a gas station eating outside with a homeless man at midnight. And it was like by the freeway. It was like a bad part of town, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so I'm like, this shouldn't be happening, you know? and and as I'm walking past them, one of the women points at the homeless guy and she's like, you see, um, there's no such thing as coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And she said, I never sit at places like this, but something told me to sit here tonight.
Hmm.
And with that, I walked into the convenience store and I was like, no way did that lady just say that.
Hmm.
There's no way, you know? Um, and then I remembered the Kabbalion and I was like, that's exactly what that book said.
Hmm.
I have to read that book,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So what were if you care to speak about it, like I said, because I'm sure people are curious of how are these things that have happened to you? Have they happened always at nighttime? First of all, as far as I know, you had like this visual sighting, during the day, like a football
Yeah.
type of situation like that. But I mean, as far as like the beings, the non-human, let's call them that, showing up,
Mhm.
was it always at nighttime? And were you, people always the first thing everybody says is sleep paralysis. You do see weird things and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So
Right.
let's just talk about what that was like, if you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there were experiences that I also had during the day. Like
Yeah.
there was one instance where, I was just terrified. I hadn't been sleeping, um, and I needed to take my mind off of all of this. And it was afternoon sometime, and so I walked outside on my cell phone, um, and I was trying to call a buddy of mine just to talk about anything, right? I didn't care what it was.
Mhm.
You want to talk about sheep herding? Let's talk about that. Like I don't, anything but
Yeah.
this, because I was just tired of it and terrified. But so I'm standing there, and the phone is ringing. He's not picking up, and it became apparent to me that he probably wasn't going to answer or he's busy. And then all of a sudden, I feel someone push the cell phone from behind me so hard that I almost dropped it, right?
Hmm.
And so I hung up the call and I turned around with a smile on my face. I expected to see my roommate standing behind me, pulling a prank or something,
Yep.
and my smile turned to horror when I realized that there was no one there, you
Hmm.
know? And so I ran back in the house and just kind of sat in my room and I was just like, what is
Yeah.
going on? Why am I being tortured like this? And then later that night, I went down to my truck and I was sitting there and I called my brother just to and I was going to finally tell him about everything that had been happening with me. And as I'm calling my brother in my truck, it happened again. Like someone pushed on the cell phone um,
Hmm.
so hard that it almost fell out of my hand. But I was in my truck, like there's no seat behind me. It was just
Yeah.
the window and the metal truck. So
Hmm.
at that point, I didn't even turn around. I was like, I know what that is. There's nobody back there. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So I just continued to call my brother, and so yeah, there were times during the day things happened. Certainly, some of those coincidences that led me to that gas station happened during the day, uh, and so it's not all just sleep paralysis. You can't just explain this away as sleep
Yeah.
paralysis because those sleep paralysis uh, experiences, if you want to call it sleep paralysis, they they fit in with these other experiences that were happening in the day that were also equally terrifying. And I was obviously walking around or totally awake when these things happened. So
Yeah.
um
And I'm not trying to, just so
yeah.
you know, I'm not
Oh
trying to
yeah.
say this is, hey, Matthew, you're just having sleep paralysis. I'm not trying to say that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that,
That's what a lot of
a
people
lot of
try to
people
excuse
maybe,
it as. Yeah.
yeah, you hear that all the time. you
Hmm.
know, and I know weird things do happen, but still, you've had after reading your book and getting into the details, you've had some, you know, very do I dare say intimate encounters, and
Yeah.
you know, things that were really, you know, uh, yeah, kind of mind blowing. I was kind of shocked by some of the stuff that I read. So let me ask you this: are these things still happening?
Yeah. I mean, well, not to the extent that they were.
Yeah.
They've kind of there's something else now. It's nothing like it was. Because about halfway through all of this, all this took place over the course of about 9 months, and
Hmm.
um, it was it had a very definite beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, and then it became something else entirely. So I have different kinds of experiences now where uh, I'll either hear a voice, you know, as I'm waking up that will tell me things, or and just after I published the book, I immediately started to get flack for it, right, online. But we all know how Twitter is.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So anyway, this isn't something I talk to anybody about, but I was like, I was thinking to myself one night before I was going to bed, I was like, what am I doing? I was like, I can just take this book down and forget this whole thing, you
Hmm.
know? I don't need this, you know? And why be a messenger delivering this message that people seemingly don't want to hear? So I
Yeah.
was like, forget it. I'm gonna take this down in the morning and just forget this whole thing.
Wow.
So anyway, that night I, you know, go to sleep, and my mother appears to me in my dream, and she says, "Matthew, don't you dare take that book down.
Uh,
It's too important."
uh,
Right? And she
wow.
passed away in 2010, and
Hmm.
then or 2015 actually. And then when I started waking from that dream, I heard the voice telling me that I needed to be more like a coconut dragon. And I was like, I was like, "What is a coconut dragon?"
Yeah.
So I looked it up and on Google, and it's like a kid's cartoon or something like that. And these dragons are born in coconut trees, and they have a really thick skin,
Oh.
so that after the egg hatches, they fall out of the coconut tree and they don't get hurt with their
Yeah.
thick skin. So
Uh, uh,
I
wow.
was like, "Oh, I get it. I get what you're saying." You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean, you think of that one guy that you helped.
mm,
You know, I mean, when I think of things like that, things become really worth it. You
mhm,
know, whatever it is, it's important. I think,
yeah.
you know, to get it out there, and you know, just you're always going to get the negatives. You know, it's just the way it is. I mean, uh, I get emails and posts all the time, and it's the way it is. And but you just got to be happy with what you're doing, and that's my philosophy anyway. Um, so uh, let's see. So this, I guess there was a question I just had for you, and it just slipped my mind. I hate when that happens, but um, I guess one of the things we could talk about is, you know, what do you think this is? Do you think we're moving in a positive direction where we'll actually know more? I know we talked about the, you know, Grush and all that, but does it feel like we're making some headway, or do you think it's the window dressing again, and you know, one step forward, two back type of thing?
You know, I don't really know. I would hope that we're making progress, and that um, something will be made public. But I don't know. I don't know how this is going to end up, and I think people need to continue to apply pressure to their elected representatives. You
Yeah,
know, so if you have not written to them and have not called yet, do so.
yeah,
Um, I mean, it's very important, and so I do have hope that that something's going to shift here. And I saw a tweet recently, Lou Elizondo talking about how, the tide is turning. It's becoming more difficult for them to keep this secret.
Yeah.
And as
I
it
would
should
agree.
be,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what I was going to ask you now.
Okay.
So let's hear how it all happened, how you were contacted for encounters, and how all that thing, worked out, and what it was like.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, I loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah, I'm the kind of person though that I like to be wallpaper in a room, and so so it was a little unnerving to be in front of all of these cameras,
Yeah.
and they were like grilling me for 8 hours. I
I
think
wondered how long. Yeah.
yeah, it went on for about 8 hours one day. I filmed my portion of that, um, in London on the 5th of November this past November.
Yeah.
And it was the crew was great.
Did
Director
they
was
actually
great.
fly you to London?
Yes, they did.
Oh my
Mhm.
God. Boy,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, I at first they were gonna do it in LA when I had agreed to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I was okay with that, because I could drive there.
Yeah.
I'm in Arizona, so it's real close. But then I got a call and they said, actually, we're gonna do it in London.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Well,
had real reservations about that because I hate flying. I can't,
oh,
can't
okay.
stand
Yep.
it.
Yep.
So at first I was like, let me think about that
Yeah.
because that's a long flight and I don't know if I want to do that. You know, too many memories of bad being on really awful aircraft in the military has made flying a very unenjoyable experience for me.
Yeah.
But I agreed to do it. But before that, I was contacted and the director wanted to have a chat with me, so we did like a Zoom call.
Now,
Uh,
how did he find you? Do you have any idea how they found you?
I think somebody read my book. I
Ah, yeah.
all the right people read my book, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so Mr. Altman
Dave
was
Altman. Yeah.
yeah, he was kind of a little bit instrumental in that. So
Hmm.
so he kind of, slipped me in the door and I had this interview with the director and it went on for a couple of hours and they liked what they heard
Yeah.
and they said, "Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to have you on. We'll be in touch," and
Yeah.
so that's how all that went down.
Now,
Um,
were you happy with how they edited it and presented it?
oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, obviously, I wish they would have gotten more into some of the other stuff that I talked about, but
Yeah.
um, I don't know. It was very well done.
Yeah.
It was a very good documentary, and I think it's real. For people who kind of have followed the UFO topic like yourself, so a lot of this was not new, like the aerial school, like
Yeah.
everybody in the UFO community about that. But this is a really tradition for people who woke up one day and they're like, "Wait, what? There's this bill going through Congress and it's talking about non-human intelligence and the government's talking about UFOs all of a sudden. What?" Like so I think that this is kind of a very, good introduction for folks like that, who don't
Yeah.
really know a whole lot about this because they haven't been following it.
I
Um,
wish they'd make more. I
yeah.
think is it four? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was 4 parts in this
Yeah.
docuseries. Mhm.
Yeah. I wish there would be, continue on, because there's so much to talk about.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't realize, as I mentioned when we were talking earlier about Go Fast video, I didn't realize that there was a connection to the Roosevelt on that as well. Was that the same year? Did that happen the same year?
Yeah, it was all in the same event.
Oh, the same event.
Well, I mean, so the event, let's be specific when we talk about the
Yeah.
event. This was something that went on for like 3 days, right?
Oh, yeah.
This wasn't just this happened once and it lasted an hour and that was it. Um, this was a 3-day long thing, and so the Go Fast was a part of that over the course of the 3 days, and so was the gimbal.
Now, when they locked on to something like that, it was moving along the Go Fast. Uh, is that was that something they're like, oh, you got it, that type of thing? Like it was that a really very unusual speed and everything for that? I mean, I don't recall if they give out the speed of what that thing was going.
I don't know. I don't know what the speed was either. I
Yeah.
mean, they call it the Go Fast because it appears to be moving pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and there are other people that claim that that's parallax and it's just like this stationary balloon maybe or something like that. But um
Well,
I
if
mean
that
I
was the
mean
case,
show
they wouldn't be locking on it. I mean,
right, yeah.
they wouldn't even bother locking on it.
Right, yeah. And beyond that, like in the gimbal footage, for instance, you hear the pilot say it's going against the wind at
Right.
120 knots, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Show me a balloon that can move into 120 knot headwinds. That's
Yeah.
not going to happen. The wind is going to carry that balloon
Oh,
with it,
sure.
and so it's not going to be moving against the
Yeah.
wind.
And there's also the Mick West explanation that it's a distance of a commercial jet turning or something like that. I don't remember what it was exactly, but whatever it was, uh, kind of proved it was proven to him that that's not the situation.
Right.
And, it's basically unexplainable. But was this was caught in the FLIR, I believe. Was this in the FLIR camera? But was that in a what spectrum is that in?
Well, that's infrared, forward-looking infrared. Um,
Did they also? Do you happen to know if they also did like a daylight video, just a plain video of it at the same time?
I don't know that. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not
Mm.
sure. And I don't know if they got. I don't know if any of this footage was from the daytime. Because
Oh, yeah.
from what I remember, this was mostly nighttime events.
Oh,
I could be wrong about that. I mean, it was
yeah.
2015, but I certainly remember this happening at night, not during the day.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, you can't really tell in the infrared. Everything
Yeah,
lights up.
I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Well, I can't believe how quickly time goes.
Yeah,
And but I also got to say, I really, when you and I talk on the phone and stuff, it's always so enjoyable.
yeah,
It's always nice catching up and everything.
yeah.
And
I really enjoy our chats.
yeah.
You're a very pleasant guy to talk to.
Ah, oh, thank you. All right, Matthew. So you put it out there that your email address is indeed on your Facebook page, so
Right,
people can reach you that way. But I agree with your mom's spirit. Keep the coconut dragon thick skin and
right,
keep it out there because you don't know who you're going to help.
right.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
All right. Well, you take care.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you. All right, everyone, we'll be back next week, and I'm waiting to hear back from my guests. I'm sorry I don't have the confirmation, but just if you want to know, go to our website, podcastufo.com. You can also sign up to our newsletter, and that will be announced on a weekly basis, our guest and blog, etc. Thanks so much, everyone, and remember to keep your eyes to the sky.